Hello, and welcome to our webinar, Introducing Outdoor School from Macmillan Children's Publishing Group. I'm Sarah Hunter, the Books for Youth editor at Booklist. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question or if you need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we'll pass along all other questions to today's panelists so they can follow up with you after the webinar. Also, Booklist will now be offering closed captioning on all webinars. To enable or disable captions on your screen, please look for and click the live transcript icon on the toolbar mentioned above. From there, you can select show or hide subtitles from the menu that appears. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of the captions at any time by selecting subtitle settings. Last but not least, links to today's slides and title lists were included in the reminder email you received from Zoom 1 hour ago. To download them, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the link located there. You can also download the slides and title list by copying the URLs on this screen into your web browser. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing from Jennifer Davis, hiker, author, speaker, and National Geographic Adventurer of the Year, and co-author of Outdoor School, Hiking and Camping. Jennifer Swanson, award-winning author of children's books, including Outdoor School, Rock, Fossil, and Shell Hunting, and Mary Kay Carson, award-winning author of nonfiction books for young people, including Outdoor School, Animal Watching. We'll hear a short presentation from each author, and then we'll move on to the Q&A portion of the webinar. If you have any questions you would like to ask our panelists at that time, please write them in the Q&A box at any time during this webinar, and we will pass them along. First, we'll hear from Jennifer P. Davis. Jennifer is a hiker, author, speaker, and Nat Geo Adventurer of the Year. In 2011, Jennifer hiked the Appalachian Trail in 46 days, 11 hours, and 20 minutes, an average of 47 miles per day. She claimed the overall male and female fastest time on the AT and was the first woman to do so. She lives in Asheville, North Carolina with her family. Take it away, Jennifer.
Hey y'all, thanks so much for having me here today. I am so excited to talk about this book, and don't worry, this is not a book about going fast or setting hiking records. My co-author and I, we both have over 10,000 miles of just traditional backpacking experience in local parks, state parks, America's long trails. I have actually been on a trail in all 50 states with my daughter. And so I know what it's like to get outside with kids. And then my co-author, Haley Blevins, she was an educator for 14 years in middle school and elementary school. So besides being a highly accomplished backpacker, she really knows how to relate to this age group and how to tap into a voice that's going to really appeal to 9 to 15-year-olds. And really, when we got approached about this project and this book, time-wise, we were both working other jobs, but when Odd Dot and Natalie, the editor, explained what this was about, Haley and I both felt like we couldn't say no. We are so passionate about getting other people outdoors in terms of the mental and physical health benefits that it provides, in terms of helping kids and families become aware of their environment, to know what's happening to their environment and want to take better care of it. That's extremely important to us. And also the age group that this book or that this series is written towards, I think is like the perfect age to start really fostering a love for the outdoors and a love for nature, because the kids who are reading these books and engaging with these books and going outdoors, they're competent. They're competent. They're small humans. They can read the instructions, they can follow through with the activities, but they don't have the built up hesitations, reservations, fear that sometimes older teenagers or adults might have about getting outdoors. And in fact, when we were first exploring this project and Natalie, the editor, said she wanted 80,000 words, my co-author and I were like, excuse me, why? This is, this is a book for youth, not adults. And she was really great. She was like, I want the Bible of going outdoors. And so for 2 years, we worked on giving her the Bible of going outdoors, and it covers all kinds of topics. And I really think this is something that kids can get a deep and broad understanding of hiking and camping. So let's dive into the slides. And I also just want to give a quick shout out to all the librarians who are joining us today, because my grandmother was a librarian, my daughter wants to be a librarian, and I've always said that trails and libraries are the most democratic places in America. So thank you for being on today. We'll take a look inside outdoor school hiking and camping right now. So we really wrote this book to make youth feel comfortable outdoors, but we assumed from the beginning that a lot of kids might not have much nature experience. So a big part of that book is like, how do you get started? Where do you begin to plan? How do you prepare? So on this page, the first slide that we're looking at, you can see one of the main mistakes that people make when they're just starting out is not realizing that the land where we go to hike or camp or recreate, someone's in charge of it. And a lot of times it's different people. It could be a state park, it could be a county park, it could be a national forest, it could be a national park. And it's really good to find out who's in charge of the land, because they're going to tell you what's allowed, what's not allowed. And also you just make sure that where you're going is open. And some places have certain hours, and sometimes there's closures. Sometimes there's closures for weather or for or bears or wildfires, depending on where you live. So we talk about prep, planning, getting comfortable, getting confident before you leave the house in your plan. And also a basic rule of thumb for hiking is that we all go different paces. And, one of the goals of the book is to say, that's okay. Like the trail doesn't care. The trail doesn't care if you hike fast and far or just sit on a log and read a book. Like it's all about getting out there. But in order to plan, you kind of have to know what pace you're going. So one of the first activities, because the whole series is so activity driven, and the goal is to engage the reader in the outdoors. So one of the first try it activities is to go someplace where you can walk for 30 minutes to an hour and figure out how far you've gone and in what period of time. Because then you can come back, and when you start planning your route, you can say, okay, when I was at the track in my school, I went 2.5 miles in an hour. Now on mountains, it's going to be a little harder, but maybe I'll go 1.5 miles to 2 miles per hour. So this is outdoor hiking and camping, but it's totally working in math problems, STEM. It's just a very encompassing book. So we're starting by planning and prepping for the trail. Let's go to the next slide. A benefit, a very healthy, positive side benefit of hiking and camping is that it is physically active, and that's good for your body. That's good for your brain, and more. I have 2 young kids, and they're in preschool and elementary school, and it is really disappointing to me how little time they spend outdoors and engaging their bodies at school. And so it feels more important than ever now as a parent to provide your kids with tools and opportunities to use their bodies in a healthy way. And that's one thing we try to do in this book is saying, hey, this is a journey and let's get ready for our journey. And so we give them some very basic exercises that they can do at home to get ready for that next adventure or the next mountain or the next trail that they hike. One thing that's not represented in the slide, but I also want to mention is that we're getting more and more research now that says not only is hiking and being outdoors so important for physical health, but it lights up part of your brains that don't otherwise engage in like an urban setting. So we need to be outdoors. We need to be in those natural settings. It helps us process things. It helps us get through hard times. And it lowers, studies show it lowers stress and it lowers anxiety. So that's another side benefit. All right, next slide. Okay. Food is a big part of the hiking experience. And as a parent, I also own and operate a hiking and guiding service I have for 13 years. And we have found that when kids, guests, clients, older adults, it does not matter. When they are involved in their food prep, they enjoy the whole experience more. There is something about hiking and knowing you have a favorite treat in your pack that you're going to get when you get to the waterfall, or you make it to the end of the trail or halfway down the trail, that feels very important. And so we have these different interactive meal planning sections in the book that start with, let's talk about some of your favorite foods. Let's talk about the foods you want to take hiking and backpacking, and some foods that maybe aren't so good for hiking and backpacking. And why is that? Are they heavy? Do they not last long in warm weather? What makes a really good hiking and camping food? And then we give all the readers the opportunity to fill in their own meal planning section for both day hikes and for overnight trips. And I can just say from personal experience that when the kids pick the food and the snacks, the hike is usually 20% better, within reason, right? Like, it's not all M&Ms, but when they are involved in that process and they are excited about the sandwich, the whole trip tends to go better. So that is a focus of this, is having good nutrition, right? Making sure you're giving your body energy. It's like a car. It's not going to go without the gas, and you want to put good gas in your body. But beyond that, what's going to make you excited to stop and have a snack on the trail? All right, let's go to the next slide. So as you can see, graphically, these books are very inviting, very engaging. And some of these skills really needed the illustrations to bring to life the words in the books. And the illustrator just did such an incredible job. This is a section. So we start with a lot of planning and prep and getting exercise and food, but then we really go into some pretty hardcore technical skills for backpacking. And we treat kids like capable young humans who are going to go outside and be able to complete these skills. But usually we start with going in the backyard to practice these skills. So this page talks about actually setting up a tarp. And some people have tarps at home and some people don't, and that's okay. We said, if you have an old bed sheet, this is a great thing to use to practice. If you're urban, if you're in the city and your parents can't take you to a park right now, you can actually do this in your living room. But by taking an old sheet and string, and if you don't have string, we were saying, you can use a shoelace. There's always to improvise this. And we are very aware that we wanted this book to be accessible. This is not a book just for kids who live in the country or live near the mountains. This is not a book for kids who have immediate access to green space. We're very conscious about writing the activities, so anyone reading this book could participate in some way. So again, an old bed sheet, and you can set up 3 different tarp formations in your living room and maybe hide from your siblings while you're at it. So, okay, let's go to the next slide. Now whereas this book is really the Bible for animal watching, but our hiking and camping book also features animals in the sense that they impact a hiking and camping trip. And so, there's a list of, and someone was asking earlier before we started, what do you do around a black bear? And we hit the highlights. You do not want to run. You do not want to pet it or feed it. You do not want to climb a tree. You want to respect it, and you want to give it space and realize that where you're hiking, it's their environment and their home as much as it is your environment. So we talk about animals and weather and the ways that it relates to moving down the trail. It's also a fun thing to get to see wildlife when you're out on the trail. And even though a lot of the book does touch on safety, we try not to do it in a way that feels too fearful or scary. And we like to encourage the readers to know when things might feel scary, because that's their body sending them signals to, like, again, create space or check in or dial it back. And that's all part of being outdoors. And it's funny, when I started hiking, I was terrified of bears and snakes, and now bears are one of my favorite animals to see on the trail. And in fact, the animals that I'm most now worried about as a hiker and camper tend to be unfriendly dogs off leash, and also insects like ticks or stinging wasps. So it's changed a lot. And we talk about ticks and stinging wasps too. So anyways, you'll learn more about the animals in this book, but go ahead, let's change the slide. So all these slides, I hope you're noticing, or what you're seeing is that it's not just reading. It's speaking to you graphically, but there's also places for the reader to then engage and interact and write inside the book. Now, this is a very simple page. It talks about bug spotting. One thing I want to note about this is we say this book is really geared towards middle schoolers, and I think that is definitely the voice of the book. But my 5-year-old, this is one of his favorite activities, is to, we call it, have a sit spot where you can just sit and observe the nature around you. And he loves bugs. So he was looking through the book, and we saw this and talked about it, and he immediately began engaging in this activity. And it's also been cool to have older adults like look through the book, grandparents look through the books, and they'll say, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I want to do that. So even though this is a book that really is written towards middle schoolers, I feel like this is a book that's really going to include and bring in the entire family, hopefully, because a lot of these activities are really fun and engaging for all ages. But yeah, this page, again, it's talking about being a part of nature, being a part of your environment, noticing what is going on and prompting you to do that. So before, I think this is the last slide to share, but before passing it on to another author in the series, I just want to say thank you to Odd Dot, because I think they did such an incredible job with all of these books. And the vision, although I really wish we could have like crashed the books and they could have come out a year ago, because I would have loved to have had, I think our book has 56 chapters with 56 prompts, 56 outdoor activities. I would have loved to have had that this past year while my kids were at home and doing virtual school. It still feels really relevant. And right now it feels really healing. I think a lot of people have had a very difficult year. One of the silver linings for me of COVID is that I think a lot of families went outdoors as an outlet, because it was one of the few things that you could do. And so a lot of kids, for the first time, or maybe more than they were used to, were exposed to the outdoors and exposed to nature. And I really think this book is going to build on that in a super positive way. And again, at this point, the benefits about being outdoors and nature therapy are going to be so good for youth and so good for the entire family. And so I'm really excited to release this book and help get other kids outdoors.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Next, we'll hear from Jennifer Swanson. Jennifer is the award-winning author of over 35 children's books. A self-professed science geek, she started a science club in her garage when she was 7 years old. When she's not researching cool STEM stuff or writing about it, you can find her walking along the beach with her husband and her dogs looking for shells. The floor is yours, Jennifer.
Hi, everyone. How are you? So Jen, that was awesome. And that was a great lead into, I think, the whole series. Because yes, this series is all about getting outdoors. To give you a little bit of my background, yeah, I really did start as a science club in my garage when I was 7. And then I was lucky enough to grow up in central Illinois. So I had a creek, or what we called a crick, in our backyard. And so I spent my summers and honestly most of my afternoons down by the creek following it, gathering rocks, looking for fossils, you know, like everybody wants to find like a dinosaur bone, right? Which is of course not, unfortunately, the normal fossil you find. So I spent my my youth doing all of that. And then I was a Girl Scout, and so I did camping. So when Odd Dot approached me and asked me to do this book, I was like, well, this is like rewriting my childhood. It's so cool. But my background is also as a science teacher. I've been a middle school science teacher for 11 years now. So I also come at it from kind of a STEM point of view, right? And so I'm going to give you a little bit of a different way to possibly use these books in your classroom or in your libraries. And I'm going to talk about how you can actually use these books in all aspects, not just the science class. You could use them in the English class, you could use them in the history class. And also if you're looking, I mean, hopefully a lot of your libraries are open now for the summer. And if you're looking for summer programs that still give you some distance, these books would be perfect for it. And there's not a lot of prep that you as the librarian would have to do for this, because it's Dot has pretty much done it for you. So let's start with the first slide and I'll give you an idea of what's going on. Okay, so in this one, this is the beginning of the book. And I also just wanted to tell you, because yes, we do a fabulous job of exercises and activities and everything, but there is also a bit of narration in here too. So it kind of paints the picture for if you're going to go outside. And this is also useful, I think, in case you are in a place maybe where you can't go outside all the time, or you live in a city, because now I live in a city, and so it's like I have to drive to get to the outdoors, which is kind of a bummer because I really liked having the creek in my backyard. But this would set the scene for some of your students or the kids that maybe can't get to a park or whatever. So this is a good place to start. There's a little story, and this is one thing that you can use with them. But it's also, as I said, STEM. So there's a lot of science in this book, particularly in my book, because I'm explaining the rock cycle. We're explaining how shells are formed, how fossils are made. So therefore, we're talking about the geologic time scale, all of those really cool science things. And the best thing is that kids are learning about them and they don't even know, right? Like, it's not like you're teaching them in the classroom and you're having them sit still and everything. So if you look at this, we talk about how you would go outside and how the rock that you just kicked down the street is history. You know, not like the it's gone sort of history, but the hundreds and thousands of years old type of history. And how many of us think about that when you pick up a rock and you think, how old is this? Like, this is probably older, way older than me, way older than my grandparents, way older than my great-great-grandparents. So when you're holding a rock, you're kind of holding a piece of history in your hand. And I think that that's what I tried to bring to this book, is a unique perspective of how to look at science in a very cool and maybe unusual way, right? Instead of straight up. So then, of course, we have the basics in here. What is a rock and a mineral? And we explain exactly what the differences are between minerals and rocks, and how minerals make up rocks and all these kinds of things. So you'll see here we have kind of the whole gamut of everything you're looking for. But as Jennifer was saying, ADOT has done a really great job of showing this visually. So this is not a boring kind of 5 characteristics of a mineral, but you actually get to see it all very visual. Next slide, please. Okay, and then of course, because just like Jennifer said, these are outdoor books. So these are the activities that I was talking about. So if you're trying to get your students outside, or you have a library program over the summer and you want to get them outside, right here, using a compass, creating your own map for how to hunt for rocks. So you're teaching kids how to use compasses, you're teaching them how to do some math, you're teaching them how to do all these different things, which are great skills, and something that doesn't, involve GPS and their cell phones all the time, right? Like, you're getting the kids off the cell phones and showing them how those of us are old enough to remember actually had to read a map a long time ago, and then, but create one. So these are all different things that you could do with your students and with your kids to get them to learn them, different things, and again, all interactive. So this one could be its own little program. If you wanted to do an afternoon of, let's go outside and let's map the backyard, or let's map around the library, or whatever you're doing, this one would be really fun to do. And it's all right here. It's all in steps. It tells you exactly what you need to have with you and then how to do it. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this one is then where you're going with building, or when you're looking for rocks. And these are all of the different ways and places that you can find rocks, which you can find rocks anywhere. You can even find rocks in the city. You can find them at the top of mountains. You can find them in the ocean. They're all over the place. So as Jennifer said, these books are written for kids who live in every different kind of ecosystem that you can think of. So these are just suggestions. And then it tells you where. On a beach, you're more likely to find hard rocks like igneous and metamorphic. Remember how I told you we're talking about the rock cycle? So we do use the proper terms. We explain all of them, what they are, and exactly how that they should, the kids should understand, in a way that kids should understand, and so forth. But we also do it in a fun way. And then we give them an area to draw their own map, which is really, really cool. And if you are in the library and you don't want the kids drawing in the books, then you just hand out a piece of paper, right? And here are all the directions, and then each kid could draw their own map and then hand it in, or you could compare them, or this is even a fun thing. Everybody draws their own map and then they switch, right? So then this person has to follow the other person's map. So does it work or does it not work? And then talk about, things that you could make it easier for people to understand. So you're teaching kids skills, communication skills as well too. You're also teaching them, writing things down, putting things in journals, all that kinds of thing that this book can do while they're having fun. And again, you can do these inside or outside. So if you need to have a program that starts inside where you talk and then you move everybody outside, this is perfect for that. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this one is talking about fossils, and fossils are not just dinosaur bones, although like I said earlier, we'd all love to be the one that finds the next new dinosaur bone or whatever, right? But fossils can be, many different things. They can be imprint fossils, they can be fossils of leaves, fossils of smaller bones from smaller animals, from insects, all these different kinds of things. And really any kind of fossil that you find as a kid, I thought was just cool, right? So this explains how fossils are formed. It explains all of it, like I said before, the geologic timescale and about when you would find certain fossils. So kids can not only find a fossil, but then identify it, because in the back of each section, rocks, fossils, and shells, there are pages that have basically, they have pictures of the rocks, and that way you can like hold it up and say, oh, I got this rock. Oh, this is what I found, right? Which is really cool, because back when I was a kid, that was much more difficult to figure out which rock you had and how you found it. But here we have pages where you write down, I found the rock here, this is the type of rock it is. And then we also include experiments that they can do to kind of test to find out, does this rock have carbon in it? Does it have sulfur in it? And all these different things. So same thing with fossils. This one is actually, again, another great activity to do outside. It's not exactly like what paleontologists do, because they look for dinosaur bones in a little different way. By what they do is they look at the rocks, and then there are certain things that they're looking for to identify whether or not a fossil might exist here. But that was going to be a little more difficult. So I asked my editor, Justin, if instead we could include something that archaeologists do, which is somewhat similar, and create our own fossil dig in the backyard. Now, I always say, ask your parents first before you just start digging up your backyard. But this is a cool thing, because you teach them how to set out grids and then number them and map them. So again, we're using math. Yes. And it's really fun. And if the parents want to get into it, or if your friends want to get into it, then their friends, you could dig something and put it in there so that you know that you're actually going to dig something up, which would be really cool. And then figure out, did you find it exactly where it was? So this is really fun. You could also, if you can't do this outside, why can't you build like a big box, fill it with dirt, and then put some stuff inside for your students to find in your classroom. I mean, of course, put down a sheet or something because you're going to have dirt everywhere. But this would be, again, something you could do inside or outside, and you're teaching them so many different skills. You're teaching them to work together, which is what happens for a lot of scientists. Scientists very rarely work by themselves. They usually work in groups. So you're teaching them teamwork and cooperation. You're teaching them to work together. Maybe everybody has different opinions for how this works. So they have to do all those kind of team building things. So this is a great thing for kids to do and for you to use in your classroom. Okay, next slide. And now we're on to the shells. Now I live in Florida. I've lived in Florida for a long time. So talk about shell hunting. We have jars and jars and jars of shells that we have collected. We just go down by the ocean. We pick up ones that we think are really beautiful and we bring them home. Now, as I say that, as Jennifer said, we do put rules in here, because the thing is you should understand there are rules about what shells you can take away from the ocean. And to be quite honest, you shouldn't take a whole bunch of shells away from the ocean, because that's the cycle, right? The life cycle. So these shells are supposed to go back into the ocean, disintegrate, and go to the bottom and form calcium carbonate and all these kinds of things, which then might become fossils or become sedimentary rock and all these kind of things. But here, this is a great picture of, you would think you would pick up a shell like this and be like, wow, okay, it's a shell. But did you know that there was an animal that used to live in there? And that each of the parts of this shell actually played an important part in this animal and how the animal fit into it and all of these different things. Most of us don't think about that. You just pick up a shell. But it's really cool to go through this, and they've done such an amazing job with the illustrations. They're all beautiful and they're colorful and they jump off the page. So if you happen to pick up one of these shells, then you can hopefully identify which ones you've picked up. And then let's see, we have one more slide, I think. There we go. And then we have this slide here, which again, it goes into further. So this is the math part that I was talking about, where if you looked at a shell like this, I mean, I know when I was a kid, I didn't understand that each one of those rings around the shell is actually a growth rate. And you can calculate how old this shell is based on the rings. And so we have the math over here that you can do that. And I know a lot of people might be like, oh, math. Again, math is part of STEM. Remember that? But this is a great way so you can get kids thinking about science that they're doing in a completely, probably a more mind expanding way, right? Instead of just looking at shells and all these different kinds of things. So, basically what these books are, and particularly what my book is it's for any of you. I mean, I'll say for the kid that loves rocks, fossils, and shells, but that's kind of obvious. But it's basically for any child of any age who's interested in learning more about the science and the world around them. And there's also, Jennifer was talking about getting outside. So in this book, we actually give you suggestions. Like if you are looking for a specific type of rock formation, we have maps that say, go to this national park or go to this national park. Or for oceans, if you're in the Gulf of Mexico, these might be the type of shells that you find. If you find a fossil, you're looking for a fossil, you're probably best to go out to the northwest or the southwest of the United States, if you're in the United States. And these are the fossils that you might find. So we give everybody hopefully ideas for vacations, right? Because everybody is right now probably wants to get outside and go do the vacations, use up all your airline points that you weren't able to use before and all that kinds of things. So this book actually gives you an idea for how to do that. And then you just take it along. You can write in it. You can carry it around. These things are actually really, they're soft and they're not heavy, but they're very durable. They have these really cool metal tabs around the top. And it's a very durable kind of cover here. So you can take them all over the place with you. So again, I think these books are so much fun. I wish I had it as a kid, and I hope that all of you will find the same thing. So enjoy.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Our final presenter today will be Mary Kay Carson. Mary Kay is the author of nonfiction books for young people. Her book, Alexander Graham Bell for Kids, received a 2019 AAAS Subaru SBNF Prize for Excellence in Science Books. She's written titles in Houghton Mifflin Harcourt's acclaimed Scientists in the Field series, including Park Scientists, Gila Monsters, Geysers, and Grizzly Bears in America's Own Backyard, and The Bat Scientists, an ALA's 2011 notable children's book for middle grade readers. She lives in Cincinnati, Ohio, with her photographer husband, Tom Olin, in a century-old house surrounded by urban green space, deer, hawks, woodchucks, and songbirds. Take it away, Mary Kay.
Hi, happy spring, everybody. I hope everyone's enjoying this spring as much as I am. It's a long time coming. I am Mary Kay Carson, and I am an author. You can go ahead and switch the slide for me. I came to the outdoor school world and the world of outdoors as one of those kids that all of you as librarians and teachers know, who was, we used to call them critter kids, which are kids who love animals and, always have baby possums that they're raising and a zoo of pets at home. And I grew up in the country and did 4-H and raised rabbits, and am old enough to have been a free range kid before we actually used those two words together. And so nature was definitely my playground and my friend, because we didn't really have friends nearby. And so that's how I became a fan of the outdoors, was through a love of animals. You can go ahead and switch the slide. Thank you. And I took that love of animals to college, as you can imagine, to study biology and ecology, and graduated in the recession and did a stint in the United States Peace Corps, where I pretty much lived outside in a grass roofed hut with a dirt floor. And that's actually where I found out that I'd like to write. And I moved to New York City and studied science writing and got a job at Scholastic working on their science magazine for elementary students called Super Science, which is still around today. So that's how I got my start. All right, you can switch the slide again. Thank you. So as you can imagine, writing the animal watching book was a perfect fit for me as an animal fan. And I just thought it would be good to see the table of contents, just so you can see what these books, they are substantial books. They're over 400 pages, all of them. Mine, as you can see, has a little bit of information about how to watch animals. And then it has a section on birds, one on mammals, another one on amphibians and reptiles, and then one on fish. So just to give you an idea of the breadth and depth of these books. Next slide. And like all of the books, again, they work on a leveled step structure, right? So no information is assumed. It's good for total beginners of any age. And that works through a leveled steps of try it, track it, and next level. And so the try it is something that gets you outside right away. The track it is something that you record, either write or draw. And then the next level is something, that is next level, something that takes you past the basic information and gives you a challenge to do. So that's just, I want everyone to understand how accessible these books are. And so it's not like if a kid comes into your library and says, hey, I saw a snake. How can I find out what snake that is? Well, you can hand them, a Peterson's Guide to Amphibians of Reptiles of North America, but that's going to be pretty dense for a lot of kids to make their way through. But if they use this book and go through the reptile section, they can figure out what they need to look for to try to identify that snake. And then there's actually a field guide to amphibian and reptiles in the book that have sort of the most commonly seen snakes. And so I think they make terrific reference books for the classroom and for libraries for animals, and also shells, rocks, and fossils. So that's a really great way I think these books can be used. Next slide. I said we had some little wildlife spotting tips, and that's another thing that makes these books different than your traditional, even like I have all these great field guides, first field guides for kids, but they don't really tell you or explain to you how you can actually see animals, you know, that you're not going to see most wildlife in the middle of the day. You're not gonna see wildlife if you make a lot of noise. And so it just has some basic tips as well as some safety stuff about seeing animals to make it more likely that you'll see something. And it also makes you a good observer, right? Which is a STEM concept. Observation is a big part of the first part of experimenting. And so becoming a good observer is a basic building block of being a scientist as well as a decent human being, I would argue. All right, next slide. So just to give you a better example of the whole try it, track it, next level, this is if you just sort of look at your right-hand side of the slide underneath the try it. So this is super easy. If a kid says, I really want to learn how to bird watch. I want to be a bird watcher. Well, again, like handing them, you know, an Audubon guide to birds of North America is a bit much, but this is something that you don't even have to know what the names of the birds are. All they do is go out and they check off basic things that they see. If they see bird poop, if they see a bird perched, if they see a bird in the air, if they see a group of birds, if they hear a bird singing, or if they see bird nests or bird feathers. And you can see that this activity would totally work in the middle of the city, in the country, in the suburbs. These are just super easy things just to get kids out and to build their confidence and to get them started. And then next slide. And then once they start to get some skills, then you can get into the whole nitty gritty of animal identification. I'm switching between groups of animals here just for fun. This is the track it activity in the mammal section. And so, like I said, the track it activities actually have you record something, not just check things off, but actually do a drawing or write about something, write up descriptions. And this is just a really fun way to draw animals. Drawing animals is a really great way to hone your observation skills and your memory. And this whole 3-circle for drawing mammals, which is head, hips, and haunches. And then also for birds, it's body and head. And I just saw in the New York Times today, like they had a little article about this on sketching animals. So I'm feeling very, hip. So then we had try it, track it, and you can go ahead and switch the slide. And then the next level is just an activity that takes it farther. So this is from the fish chapter, and this is just an activity for, seeing fish at night in the dark water, and you just, tie up a flashlight and a rock to make it heavy in a bag, and you let it sink down off the dock. And, we've all been places by the water at night, and it's fun to look at the stars and everything, but there's also a lot going underwater. Okay, so besides the whole activities and skill building, then the book has, just like Jennifer Swanson's book about rock fossils and shells, there are field guide pages, right? So go ahead and switch the slide for me. And this is like a field guide page from the birds. And you can see it's just basic information, but it's super kid friendly because we have something that tells you what size to look for, and they learn in the chapter to use a sparrow and a crow as sort of a a unit, a bird unit. So is it bigger or smaller than a sparrow? Is it bigger or smaller than a crow? And then, you know, where they live. So if they're seeing a bird and it's not where they are right now, you can, you know, eliminate that possibility. And there's also places to record when you saw it. Go ahead and switch. And so we have those for mammals too. And one thing that I didn't mention that's a lot of fun is that the animal watching book uses lots of cool retro art from the old golden guides. Macmillan owns those now. And so the books have a really great sort of, I don't really know how to say it, except it's like sort of a cool retro look that's really fun. Last slide. And here's one from the Amphibians and Reptiles book. Here's that garter snake. Hiker Jennifer was saying that she saw a garter snake. So that's just some examples of the reference pages, the field guide pages in the book. And so the books can be used in the classroom and in libraries as a reference. They can be used as hands-on activities. And the books can be reproduced the pages can be reproduced for personal use. And then there are also outdoor activities. So in my opinion, there's all kinds of ways that teachers and librarians, both indoors and outdoors, both in science classes and art classes and math classes, can use the pages and different aspects of the book to teach and learn, and most importantly, encourage kids to get outdoors, because we as human beings depend on the systems of the earth to provide us with water and air to breathe and soil that we can grow food in, and it can't take care of us unless we take care of it. And I, for one, am hoping that the next generation maybe even does a better job. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mary Kay. Now I'm going to invite all the panelists to turn on their videos for the Q&A portion of the webinar. And just a reminder also to all of our attendees that if you have questions you would like us to ask during this portion of the webinar, you can submit them in the Q&A box and we will pass them along. So Mary, you touched on this a little bit, but I'd like to give the other authors a chance to talk about ways librarians specifically can use these books with their patrons or programs. There are a lot of sections to write in these books, which I know can be a little bit daunting for a librarian. So how do you imagine a librarian using these? Jennifer Davis, why don't we start with you on this one?
So we are, again, like huge personal fans of libraries, and we go to a lot of library programming. And I would actually see these books, if I were a librarian, as a programming guide. I know there's so many different options in the summer for, or all year round, for communities to get engaged and plugged into their local library. And again, in an ideal world, my vision is these books are so great because you can cover a concept indoors. Almost all of them, I think, just like Mary Kay and Jennifer mentioned, art becomes a sort of integral part of nature. And these journals in so many ways are like, draw it, sketch it, write it down, figure it out. So I almost see like covering a topic for programming, having an indoor activity of like, okay, let's start our nature journal. Let's draw a picture of an animal you saw this week. Let's figure out some like a plan for going outside, but having an indoor activity. And again, using these guides, it is there for you. Like you will use it, you will prompt the students, the youth who are with you. You don't have to come up with it on your own. But then if you have the ability to go outside, or if you have open space to do an activity inside, so many of these books have activities, which I think are going to be so great for that community event. Because I have one kid who, she would sit and listen to a book reading all day, but her brother has got to do Legos or be engaged in some way, shape, or form. And so I think these books offer the best of both worlds, all worlds. And so I would highly encourage librarians to look at these books as a tool for programming within their communities.
Great, thank you. Jennifer Swanson, how would you answer that question?
Well, so I talked a little bit about it. I mean, I agree. I like we've all said, I think these are perfect, like they're already prepared for you to use, and you could take them outside and do all these different things. But another thing that I would encourage you to think about, and this is one of the passions, because I have a blog with this and everything, is to think about science and literacy together. And maybe you have kids who are like, do I really want to go outside? Where are the bugs? And what if I find a snake? And okay. So why don't you use these books as a jumping off point for fiction for them? Have them write a story. Okay. You are going on a hike. What do you think you'll see? How will your characters react? Have a character that loves science, have a character that maybe doesn't like science, that's afraid of snakes, and you could jump off this and have kids do all of these different things with fiction as well. I mean, I of course am the science kid, so I would be outside doing the journals, but I'm just saying, if you have the kid that's into fiction, or as a child and still as an adult, I love mysteries, and for me, what is science but solving a mystery, right? So all of a sudden, these are your books, and then you're writing a mystery. I mean, you could do so many things with these books, not just take them outside if that's not what you want to do.
Great. And Mary Kay, you mentioned that the pages were reproducible. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. The books, the pages of the book. So if you want to reproduce, I showed the little checkoff list with what birds we're doing outside. We've been told that, for personal use, the books can be, you can make a photocopy of that. So then, kids could take it outside with them during programming. I'm not a lawyer, but that's what I've been told.
I mean, if you have any questions, I would contact Macmillan. But what we were told is that for single use, like if you own the book or whatever, but not for like, hey, we're going to reproduce this for the entire library, right? Because that would get into copyright issues. But if you, I mean, I had 3 kids. And while I love these books, I don't know that I would buy 3 sets of them, right? so I might be like, okay, everybody gets their own sheet of paper for my particular family. And I think Macmillan would probably be okay with that.
And I would also say, having read these, that the activities aren't like, you don't need the pages in the books to complete the activities. You can start your own life list for bird watching on a piece of paper. You don't need to do it in the book. So there, I think, as Jennifer Davis was saying, as in terms of a programming guide, there are a lot of really strong ideas there that don't necessarily depend on writing in the book itself. Although, enthusiastic kids are going to be enthusiastic no matter what, I bet. I think another one of my questions is about how comprehensive these are, and they are very comprehensive. And I imagine it might be intimidating to somebody who might be a little bit of a beginner for going outdoors, for a kid who maybe isn't that familiar with camping but might like to try. So can you all speak a little bit about where kids might start with your books, apart from the beginning, but if there's like a particularly strong entry point for each of your books? Jennifer Swanson, why don't we start with you for this one?
So yeah, these books are very comprehensive. As my editor, Justin Kresner, and I learned, unfortunately, there are limitations to how big the books could be. So we actually had, I had hundreds of pages of rocks, because there's so many different kinds of rocks. And then we had to kind of cull them down. So I will say, you're not going to find every single rock there is on the planet in this book, or shell, or fossil, but it's a very comprehensive one. It's not, as far as intimidating, I look at, I just talked about it being a mystery. It's a search, it's a hunt, right? Like, ooh, I found this rock. Oh, this is so cool. Like, is it on this page? No, is it? And then actually we go through steps for, is this an igneous rock? Is this a sedimentary rock? Is this a metamorphic rock? And we ask you a bunch of questions in there. And then instead of looking through I don't even remember how many pages we had, but maybe like 25 or 30 pages of the rock guide, now you know, oh, I know exactly to turn to this section. And it's the same thing for the shells. So I think we've set it up so that we kind of lead you into it just like you would as if you're solving a mystery. We give you clues so that you're not completely overwhelmed looking through, you know, the entire book trying to figure out what this is. Just do it step by step.
That's a great approach. I really like that idea, treating it as a mystery. We did have one question from the audience about whether there are winter activity suggestions in your titles. Jennifer Davis, I know you speak about this a little bit when you're talking about hiking and camping. Do you want to speak about using these books in the wintertime?
Sure. And I actually want to tag on quickly to what Jennifer Swanson said. I think these books are really exciting for this age group because it's one of their first opportunities to really use a type of field guide. And all of our books can be read chronologically, and that makes sense in a lot of ways, but they can also be flipped through for specific skills or specific information or specific identification. And the thing I love as an adult about a field guide is it's like putting together a puzzle. So you can flip through it and find things you know, find things you're interested in, find things you're familiar with, and you build off of that. And I think all the books are written that way. So every kid, depending on where they are, what they're used to, whether they live by the ocean or in the mountains, they're going to have different familiarities, and they can use these books and find what's most familiar to them. And then they build their knowledge off of that. So it's really, I think, fun and exciting that all of a sudden you're like, whoa, I don't have to read a book start to finish. I can like flip through it and find what speaks to me and then like expand from there. So I love that the books can be used both ways. I believe in hibernation. So my co-author wrote the winter sections of our book, but yes, it is completely possible and very important in some places to be able to get outdoors in winter. And that is why the books are so comprehensive, because we live in a very diverse country with all types of weather and conditions. So we talk a lot about different layering techniques. We talk about what gear you would take when you're winter hiking or winter camping. There's lots of really specific things we mentioned, like a lot of water filters you have to be very careful with if you're camping in the winter, or keep them in your sleeping bag at night, because if they freeze, they will break. So the different considerations about pacing and mileage and what to do if you're navigating in snow. Yes, it's all a part of the book, but I would say in that sense, it is topical. There are activities where you can practice it even if you don't live in a snowy place with winter weather. But that's something where, after getting the basics that the book provides, if you really live in a cold weather setting, there's the opportunity, it suggests, for like more resources, more training, more planning to handle those specific conditions.
And Mary Kay, I feel like your book in particular is very well suited to wintertime, because there's something really nice about looking out a window into your backyard in the winter and looking at the wildlife. Do you want to speak a little bit about using your book in the winter?
Exactly what you said. And the other thing is that, we have tons about tracks, and there's nothing better than looking for tracks in the snow. So absolutely, and it's actually can be a lot easier to see animals sometimes in the winter, because since they have fewer resources, if you go where those resources are, you're going to, more likely see them. Just like, you see birds come to the bird feeder, if there's only one place with open water, that's a really good place to go and look for animals.
Great. Well, I think that we are about at the end of our Q&A section. So thank you for your wonderful, comprehensive answers. And I want to thank you all for joining us today. These books all sound great. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's slide presentation, title list, certificate of completion, and video recording. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit www.booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones like the ones you see here. Did you know registration for ALA's virtual annual conference and exhibition is now open? Taking place between June 23rd and 29th, this year's conference will feature amazing speakers, educational programming, and an opportunity to connect with colleagues and librarians everywhere. Visit 2021.alaannual.org for more details. Be sure to check out Book Links, our quarterly supplement to Booklist, which is perfect for educators and school librarians and great for parents looking for remote schooling ideas. It is now freely available to all. To start reading, type booklinks.booklistonline.com into your web browser. Not yet a subscriber? Pair the print reading experience with the convenience of online access at booklistonline.com and lock in print, online, digital, and archive access by taking advantage of the special webinar offer to get Booklist for only $75. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. And one more thank you to our sponsor, Macmillan Children's Publishing Group and their imprint Odd Dot. This concludes today's webinar.